All right, today I'm going to register a 3-color print. This is not a very complicated print, it's a pretty simple print. But I haven't done a registration video yet, so I'm going to just show you how I register. You can use an old t-shirt, one that you've messed up before or whatever, but a nice option is, this is called a test Pellon. I just got this from Amazon. I'll put it in the description as always. But this is just a nice, easy way to register your prints without messing up a brand new shirt. These cost about, I think when you get a pack of 50, they come out to like 60 cents a piece or something like that. So pretty affordable option, and it does a really good job. So I'm going to print my white, and then I am going to print the other colors over it. So I'll show you how I do that. First thing is, always make sure that you put whether you're registering with a t-shirt or with a test Pellon, you're always going to make sure that you put a lot of spray tack so that it doesn't move around, because you want that to be really still so that the print is not shifting around. So I'm going to use a pretty good amount of spray tack. So I'm just going to make sure that my medium that I'm printing on is not moving around. Again, you can use a t-shirt or a test Pellon, same difference, but you just don't want it shifting around. So this print, the first layer is going to be white. Not only is it going to act as an underbase for my colors, but some of the white is going to be part of the print. So I'm just going to do a single white, a single gold, and a single green. The gold and the green are going to be printed over the white area. So so this print will actually act as both an underbase and as the print itself. Okay, so I'm going to put down my first layer of white. All right, looks good. Now I'm going to flash this. I'm going to actually over flash it a little bit so that it's really, really nice and dry. And I'll show you why I do that in just a second. So I'm going to flash this, and then I'll bring it back and show you what I do next. Okay, so I've flashed this. I may have over flashed it intentionally so that it is really dry to the touch. Now I'm going to let it cool down, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this print film over the top of it, and I'm going to print my colors on top of this film the first time. So that way I can know exactly where it lines up. So I'll show you how that works. I'm going to put a description to this or a link to this in the description. But I'm just going to cover it with this film, and but you want to make sure that this is cooled all the way down, otherwise it makes this film a little bit wrinkly, and you don't want that. So this is still just a little warm to the touch, so I'm going to let it cool down for another 30 seconds, and then I'll print the next layer. Okay, so I cut off a little square of this film. I'm just going to lay it directly over the top of this. And I'm going to make sure that it's nice and smooth. You don't want any wrinkles in it at all. So I'm going to smooth this out as much as possible. So this film is going to lay really nicely over the top. If you do it when it's too warm, it'll get little tiny bubbles in it. So you really want to make sure, again, that you let this cool down. Okay, so this is my second layer. I'm just going to try to align this over the bottom print. And before I tighten it down too much, I just want to push down on it, because when I do my ink, it's going to push the screen down onto it. So I just kind of want to look at how that's going to line up. So I've got it pretty much where I want. And now this for me is always the most difficult thing. Sometimes when I'm tightening my screws to lock the screen in, the screen will shift a little bit. So I like to hold the screen down over my print while I'm tightening these so that my screen doesn't move. So I want to make sure that this is nice and tight. But I like to hold this screen down because otherwise it'll shift around a little bit as you're tightening. So I'm just looking at where my print is gonna fall on this. I think I'm gonna be off a little bit on this side. This side looks a little bit low, and I could fix it now, but I really want to show what it looks like to dial it in. So I've got it where I want to print on right now. I'm going to tighten these just to make sure it's not moving around at all. And then I'll ink this thing up and show you that next step. Okay, so my film is tight. I'm gonna do my first pass of gold. So I'm gonna flood first. So I'm going to print it just like I would on a shirt. I'm going to print over the top of it. And now I'm just going to take a look at it. So it's not bad for the first time. Like I said earlier, I think this side's just a little bit low. There's a little bit of white peeking through right here. It's a little bit of white peeking through here. And then on this side, it's a little... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this side of my screen up and out and do another pass. But here's the nice thing about the film, right? So I need to make sure that I get this thing dialed in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take just a simple roll of paper towels and I'm just going to get rid of this ink. Excuse me, get rid of this ink. So it just wipes cleanly off. And that's the purpose of the film, right? So I haven't ruined the test Pellon. I can do this over and over and over again. After, you can maybe see it, it's got a little bit of a yellow tint to it. I'm not too worried about that. I just want to know that when I'm actually printing, exactly where the ink is being laid down. So I'm just going to wipe the ink off. If I do this quite a few times, I might put a little spray wash on there. Press wash on there just to get all the ink off, but it's not really necessary. I just want to make sure that I know where my next print is going to be. So depending on your press, right? I just basically want to bring this over and up a little bit. Take a look at it. Okay, now I'm gonna tighten it. Okay, so give us another shot. I don't have quite enough ink on my screen yet. Alright, so I'm going to give this another pass. Okay, so I'm looking at it, looks good. I fixed this little area here. I don't see any white peeking through. There is the most minuscule little white here, which means I need to move my print over this way. I mean, it is the most minimal. I would feel perfectly fine sending this out with that little tiny, it's almost unnoticeable. In fact, I'm gonna pull this off and show you up close just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But there's just a very little white sticking out. The white is on this side of the gold, and here as well, the white is on this side of the gold. There's just a little tiny white peeking through, so I'm gonna try to fix that right now. I have a guest appearance from Beef. Okay, so again, I'm just going to start from scratch. I'm going to wipe all the yellow ink off. Did I just call it yellow? It's gold. I'm going to wipe the gold ink off. And then I'm going to try to cover up that one little tiny spot. When I am doing my art in AI, Adobe Illustrator, I do what's called a stroke of 1 pixel. And I don't know how that converts into real world measurements, but it's not very big. But I half it on the design. So basically my stroke everywhere on this is a half of a pixel. I don't know if it's a pixel, a half of a whatever Adobe is. So I do 1/2. So it's a pretty tight registration. I know some people do it really, really tight, like they only use a quarter of a whatever it is, a quarter of a line. But I feel pretty good when I use a stroke of 1 and I half it on the line. I'm gonna try to nudge it without loosening it too much. Okay. I'm just gonna go over one more time to see if I can cover up that spot. All right. All right, that looks good. Looks good. Not bad. Okay. So, all right, so I feel really good about where it's at right now. There's no underbase peeking through. The gold is locked in exactly where I want it. So I'm gonna move on to the green. So really simply, one thing that I like to do after I get done with one of the colors is I'm gonna actually print it on the Pellon. So you don't have to do that, but I like to make it a complete print. So I am going to make sure your Pellon doesn't move. And this is the reason why I like to, oops, luckily that landed the right way. This is the reason why I like to over flash, is because a little bit of the white ink came up on some of these areas. And I want to try to make sure that it's cured well enough so that it doesn't come off on this. When I'm actually printing, I would flash it less, but when I'm using this film, I always try to over flash it so I don't have a lot of this stickiness. Okay, so I'm going to print this gold. Okay. So now I've got my gold on my Pellon, and now I'm going to flash it, and then I'll move on to the green. So the process is going to be exactly the same with the green. I'll go through it a little bit more quickly, but as you all know, I like to repeat myself, so I'll repeat myself some more. So when I did the gold, I didn't really show you like lining up the screen. So when my screen is down, it could be all over the place. So basically, I just want to come in here. I want to line this thing up as much as possible. I think I said it earlier, is I want to make sure that I'm like imagining what it's like when I do a print, which means when I do my print, the screen is going to go down and touch. So sometimes just by where you're standing or the way you move a screen, you can't really tell for sure. So I'm first of all just lining this up as much as possible. I'm pushing it down, nudging it a little bit. Take a little bit of time just to make sure that this thing is nice and lined up to exactly where I need it to be. Okay. Okay, so now this isn't perfect, but it's pretty close. So now I'm just going to slowly go around. I'm going to slowly go around and tighten my screen in. And I'm holding this down pretty well. I don't want it shifting at all when I think I've got it right where I want it or close to where I want it. So I'm holding this thing down with my left hand, and then I'm just tightening with my right hand, because it really does move the screen. If you're not holding this down, or at least for my press, if I'm not holding this down, the screen will shift around a little bit as I'm screwing them in. So definitely want to try to keep it as still as possible. Okay, so I got that fairly tight. And I'm just going to take a look at it. Pretty close. Okay, I feel like I'm pretty close on that. So that's just the process of getting the screen about where you want it. Obviously, it's going to depend on your press. If you have micro registrations, you just want to get it really close. If you have a press without micro registrations, you need to nail it and get it in there as well as possible, because you can't really shift it around. So just make sure you take your time on this. You know, the sign of a good print is really the registration. If it's out of registration a little bit, like you know it, you see it, and it's just not a sign of a great print. So I'm gonna take a look at this, see how my green and my gold and my white line up. I would say, as far as registering a print, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 3. It's a really easy. It's 3 colors, but there's no really fine lines in this. I'm dealing with a lot of big spaces, so this is actually a pretty easy registration. But I just wanted to give you guys an example of how I register a print and some of the steps to go through it, so that you can make sure that you get your registration dialed in. So now I'm going to ink this up, and I'll take a look, see where my green's at. Okay, so I'm going to print my green. The green is not going to cover all of the white. I think I mentioned that earlier. This is a 3-color print, but the white is part of the print. So I'm going to print my green and just kind of see where my registration falls. I can see already this part's going to be a little bit off, but give this a go. All right, so this looks really good. It's covered all of that. Looks pretty good. Man, this green is dark. All right, so this looks really good. This looks really good. This little tiny bit of white peeking out right here on this edge. So I might bump this down just a little bit. A little bit of white right here that I think kind of looks good with the design, but I'm going to bump that thing down just a tad and see what that looks like from here. I don't really know why, but I always use new paper towels for a new color, so. Wipe this off. And again, I just use a paper towel. It wipes off pretty well. If you get a lot of buildup, if it takes you several tries, sometimes you get a little bit of ink buildup. I might use some press wash on it, but I always just want to make sure that my Pellon stays where it is. Okay, that looks a little bit closer. Let's give this a shot. Okay, and boom, now we're pretty much in registration. Looks good, looks good. Put all this where it needs to be. Looks good. The only thing I'm concerned about is how dark this green is. Man, it is dark. Anyway, that's not really what this is about. So, registering a screen, right? Couple things that you're gonna need. Test Pellon would be a good idea. Again, a t-shirt works fine. A film that makes it easy. You don't want to just keep reusing. A Test Pellon is only, I think it's like 50 or 60 cents, which is not a lot of money, but if you use 10 of them, that takes away from your profit. So, little film, a Test Pellon, getting that thing dialed in, making sure that the little tiny movements that we make are covering all of the underbase. If you're not using an underbase, registering is a lot easier, but using an underbase, you want to make sure that your underbase isn't peeking through, and you just want to make sure that you're in good registration. If your machine is good, if your press is good, it should stay in registration throughout your printing process. These, I have about 95 of these to print, so I'm hoping not to have to register or adjust at all for my registration. This machine, this press is pretty good about staying in registration. It doesn't move around very often. I've had very few problems with that. So better machine that you get, the better results you're going to get. But even with a mediocre machine, you're going to still be able to get good results if you're just very diligent and make sure that you get good registration. Starting from a good spot of registration, a good place, is always going to make the whole process easier. So 3-color print, simple registration. Hope you guys get something out of this, and happy printing. One thing I forgot to mention is I actually burn registration marks into my screens. Something simple like this, I usually don't even use the registration marks. I should probably just take them off. But if you're using your registration marks to line up it does help for lining it up, because you can see if the squares and the X's are right exactly on top of each other for registering. But if you do, here's a tip. Don't forget to don't forget to tape off the registration marks before you make your first print. I can't tell you how many first prints I have made that have a registration mark on it, and then I have to either squirt it out or throw it away. So make sure that if you are using registration marks, you cover that up with tape before you actually get into your printing process.